Now, if we talk about the put test cases and delete and all, let me go there because this time we don't have a implemented way of it. We need to implement it. So I wanted to record this implementation, how I'm doing the implementation of it, as well as it is slightly different than the previous test cases. So maybe first, let me first walk you through the feature files here. So as you notice, for each of these cases, I'm writing a separate feature file. I'm appending it, giving a proper tag at the put because I might need this later for the execution purposes. So if you notice, I am writing the first test case, which is a positive test case. Now again, from where I'm coming to this list, again, I'm using this collection. So I have 3 test cases, 1 positive, 2 negative test cases for put. So let me go back to my test case, which is a positive test case. Now you see the steps which we have here in put is slightly different. So I am writing go REST API is up and running. In this case, if I go inside this implementation, again, I am reusing it, okay? This is presented inside get request step def, but I am reusing it. So I've written given go REST API is up and running, which is request specification given base URI auth OAuth2. So this is what I'm returning from the first statement. Now, second is, and I have a new user created in the system. Now, what does this mean? Why do we need it? Because see, guys, this is a put request. Now, for put request means we want to update something in the system. Now, what you're going to update? You're going to update an existing user. Now, when it comes to the updating of the existing user, the user has to be there. In our case, we'll have lots of users, right? But we are not supposed to use the existing one because there's a risk. And what is that risk? The risk is quite simple. That is, let me refresh this. The risk is you have, let's say, decided to modify 449 and you will kind of hard code that inside your system. What if this user is not present when you try to run your script, right? Let's say someone deletes it before and some different script or different manually, someone deletes it to validate something. Then our test case will fail unnecessarily. So these kind of things you're not supposed to use hard coded. So point is, whenever you have a test case and that test case requires a data, in this case the test case requires an ID which it needs to be, which it need to modify. So in this case we need a ID which is already present in the system. But as I said, we are not supposed to use something which is already present. So why not try to create your own data in the test case itself? And that is what I am trying to do. This is one of the strategy of test data creation. That is, while running your test case, whatever data that test case requires should be created while that test case is in progress, or as a prerequisite to that test case. So then the test case will be independent. It will never fail because it will be responsible for creation of its own data. That is how we reduce dependency of the test cases. As you can see the statement, and I have a new user created in the system. That means I am creating a new user first. And how I will create the new user? Again, using post request. So for every put request, I am doing a post request as well. Because while doing that post request, that's the only way for creating the data. And that the same data I'm trying to modify at runtime. So no matter how many times you run this test case, every time it will create a new data, and that is what it will go and modify. So that is what I am not implemented yet. So if you see that, it's coming in a yellow line. Then when I hit the API with put request to update the existing user details, API should update the user, and get request to the user should return the updated information, right? So complete test case. Here I'm creating, here I am updating it, and then I'm checking the response, whatever was returned is right, and then I'm I'll hit the API again to do a get there. So you notice, for a put request, I'm doing a post, then I'm doing a put, and then I'm doing a get. If you can remember, in the post test case, I was doing a post and then I'm doing a get. But in the put, I'm doing 3 things. I'm doing a post first for creation of something. Then I'm doing a put here for doing actual operation. Then I'm validating here, and then I'm doing a get request to get it, to see whether whatever I have sent as an update is being returned as well when I do a get for that entity. Right, fair enough. So maybe let's begin. Now, first we need to generate these step definitions, and we need to have a separate step definition files. Maybe this miscellaneous, I'll delete. This was created earlier. I don't need this anymore. I will be more specific in terms of step defs. So first of all, what we'll do, we'll do a right click, new, do a class, then write put request step defs .java. Automatically build extension will come. I have a class here now. Then I will go here, check what is the tag is put. I will go to runner. Now all this I'm doing to generate the step definition signature files for this, signature methods for it. And here I will say dry run as true because I don't want to actually run it, tags as put, and then I simply run it. Now it has identified that these many step defs are not present, so I'll copy them. Now since these are related to put request, so I'll paste it here. And of course these error has to be resolved, so I'll resolve these quickly. Maybe, so we have given when then, so we have two then, one given, or perhaps three given statements. And as I told you earlier as well, if you're writing an and here, this and simply means, and if it is written below then it becomes a then. So if you see get request user should return updated information, if you see what happened to that request, it becomes a then and not an @and annotation there. So in Cucumber latest version, previously we had this, I think still we had certain kind of annotations called as @and, which can be reused across anywhere between, under any of the step def annotations given when or then. But I don't think that is a very good way of writing the step, unless you really want to make something really easy and reused to, or something to be reused again and again. But I think the step def has to be properly annotated rather than doing this @given. I don't want to do this, and which is again a valid annotation, and this can be used everywhere instead of anywhere. Like it will be identified even though you go and use it inside given, when, then. But as I said, I want things to be very specific, so I will only use given, when, and then statements. So for example, this and will always will match with the then part, because that's what I have done there. Or this always will be part of then statement and not and. However, you can do that, you can mark it as @and here, so it's up to you. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't like that. Anyway, so now this yellow line is not going away. Best thing to make it updated is you reopen it, so these lines will go away. That means now I have all the step definitions file in place. So I'll go back now. I can start implementing these step definitions. Let me move that. Okay, so when I have a new user created in the system, so this is, as I said, this is a post request, right? So instead of calling these multiple statements, I will just write a code here which will do a quick post. How? I will make use of the existing code perhaps. So what I'll do is, maybe the previous one which I have somewhere here, right? So this is perhaps is a code for me. Right, so I should be putting this here. Now it becomes very, very huge, isn't it? So let me do one more thing. So let me first of all extend this, because everything has to be extended to test base, otherwise that state sharing I was talking about of request specification and response object will not be there. So let me import it. So this is done. Now it doesn't look very good to me to put everything here. So why can't we do one thing? Can we introduce a utility class somewhere, or we can make use of this test space as well here, right? So I'll go here, I'll remove that. Or maybe instead of doing it here, why can't I just create a new package .api, and then inside this I can create a class. I can name it common API methods, something like that. And then I can go here, go to new and create, sorry, not here. I'll create a simple method called as public void create new entity or create new user in Go REST API, right? And I will just put the code which I actually have added here, cut it, and I will paste it here. And you really, don't have to necessarily add these statements. So let me first resolve these errors quickly. So I have also extended this to test base because this few common method which is actually present there. So now I have server access token, all these things. I really don't have to necessarily add these many validations because this is not a test case which I have. I am using this for creation of a new user. I can let it I can make it remain like this, or I can just simply, to make things simple, I can remove these validations, right? So what I'll do, I will actually move it. Maybe I'll just comment this part. So once I run this is actually enough to create a user. So I can just maybe I can make it like this, but I will not do a get part here because, as I said, is not a test case. So I will not run this. Okay, now here this method will simply be used. This method will simply be used for creation of entity, creation of a user. Now I really don't have to put it here. I can actually put this inside my test base and all, but for the sake of simplicity, for not cluttering the test base class, I'm putting it somewhere else. Okay, so now how will I access it? I can have two ways. Either I will make it as static and I just reference this and call it, or I can just make an object of it, right? So what I'll do, I'll try to make an object because I want to avoid using statics and all. That sets the wrong precedence. So I'll go inside my put request. I'll create a class of common API methods. Common API methods is equal to new common API methods. So new class, and then I will apply the method here dot create new user to Go REST API, right? So now I have a system is running slow. Now I have in this particular, I have a new user created in the system. For this, I have a new entity created, but the problem is I want this to be returning something. In this case, it's not returning anything. So what I want is, once the user is created, I want it to return something. So I think I've removed one important step from here, which is to fetch the ID which got generated. So let me bring that code back. Where's that? Inside my post test case. Yeah, here. So this is how I will get the ID. So let me put this. After response is validated, I will write this line here, and I will return this, return ID. What is this? This is a string. I will change this to string. Come on. System is running quite slow. So I'll do it public string. So now this method generates an entity and returns something in an ID, the new user ID. So I'll go back here. I will write string ID, or I can simply do a create an instance variable because this ID has to be shared here when I hit an API, right? So I will do a string new user ID, maybe something like that, is equal to null. Right now it's null, but as soon as the first given step will get executed, this will be creating the new or setting this with the actual user ID. Okay, now next is when I hit the API with the put request to update the existing user details. Now here what I have to do, it's pretty simple. I have to do a response, sorry, request, request request spec dot, I don't know what is request spec, actually not request spec, request spec dot, then I have to do a put. In the put I have to put a URL, and before that I need to do many things because I need to set the header and body again, because in this case also I'm sending something. So maybe this would be something similar to the our post example. So let me copy the files from here. So I would need this actually. I could have reused this, by the way. I could have reused this, but maybe for this I need to do some more parameterization. So I'll choose not to. So where's my put request of def? So here, instead of writing this, I'll copy paste. Request specification scenario is what we need. So maybe I'll just copy paste it from here. Now these hooks could have been reused, put it somewhere where I could have done it, but maybe just, again, for the sake of simplicity, let me just do it the same way. It's harmless or by repeating it. So email, again, I need, because let's say email in this case, I'm not validating. So let's say I'm not validating the email, or maybe let me, so one more thing I will do is, let me close this. I'll copy this as well, like it inside here. So I have email as well. So this, and I hit the API with the put request. So I have to make some changes. So when I hit the API with the put request to update the existing user details, so here I've set the header as well as the body, and maybe here in the same line, in the same statement, I can write response is equal to request spec dot spec dot put. In the put section, I can enter the URL. Now this put is relatively different than how we implemented post. It's not that something we always have to implement something in a very similar way. Of course you should, but sometimes if there's a need to write something in a different way, you are free to do so. So in this case, endpoint for me is actually that's inside the post request, this one. So how will I know what is the endpoint? Maybe I can also copy it from here. So for the put positive, this is the endpoint. Maybe that's the one I would use. And this ID which you see here, it's static. I need to make this, I have to generate this at runtime, isn't it? So that is what I have already done. I'm going to parameterize it. From where? From new user ID. So new user ID is something which was none earlier. When this statement got executed, this has created a new user ID for me. And that new user ID I'm putting here inside the second method. So once this statement gets executed, what it will do, it will set the header, it will set the body, and the body I really don't have to add these many details, because let's say if I'm creating something, something in the previous step, and all I need to change is the email. So I've only mentioned email perhaps. So if I go here, if I remove this, okay, and I'm only send this, so it will only, I think, will take this much. Maybe I have to validate this first. Let me do so. Yeah, so for example, if I remove that and I will do this, and for 449, I think, which is this particular 449, this is what we have here. If I go here and change this to XYZ 1 2 3 4, something like that, and if I only change this value, yeah, so it works. So all I need to do is, if I want to update only email, I can only do so. So if I go and check if it's reflected here, yes, XYZ 1 2 3 4 is being reflected. It means it's working. So that is what we are going to do. So we don't need to add all these gender email with every put request, because this is a put request test case, isn't it? So what I'll do, I'll only keep an email here, and that's what I'm going to validate every time. So let me remove all that. and let me put it here. So I'm only validating the email, and you notice for email I need to parameterize this, and I've added a shortcut how to parameterize a value which is present inside a string. So you remove that, you put a space, you remove that, then you put write two double quotes. Now in this case 3 are printed, but you need to add 2. You go inside, you add 2 plus symbols, then you go inside, then you write the variable name, and that is it. So that is how I embedded the email which I've generated at the top. I've added that here. Right, so my hitting part is also done. Now this will update the user. Now comes the validation of the response part. Now response I'm doing here. API should update the user. I think this is what I can copy from somewhere from post for a guideline. So what I should be validating is these things in the response. Created a new user. So maybe I'll do check here. What is the response here? Response here is status code is 200, right? So maybe that is what I will write there. So in the put request case, I will write that piece of lines here. So maybe I'll remove that. I don't need it. Response dot then assert that body meta success true. Meta code which is being returned is 200. 200. Then okay, everything worked as expected is what I'm expecting in the message section. So I will copy that. And then these first name, last name, gender is, I will not check that. All I will do is check the email, whether email is updated or not, right? And maybe I'll remove this as well. So this will remain, this will be my validation part for the return response. And at last, get request to the user should return updated information. So here I will have to do a get. So again, something similar to what we have done earlier, but let me copy paste that. So this is the get part, right? So I'll copy that. And I will put that inside my get part here. So here ID is written using result.id, right? And by the way, we already have a new user ID here, so we don't really need that. We will use this directly. So we will not use this, we will say this directly here. Right, so new user ID. When it will do a get on the new user ID, all I'm interested in knowing whether the email which I entered there, so I'm interested in knowing not the first name, last name, and not the gender and date of birth. Maybe other things can remain the same, but I'm only interested in knowing that the email which I updated earlier is actually correct. Okay, so this is what I'm doing to validate. Okay, so my put test case is complete. Maybe we'll try to run it and see whether it works.
Yeah, so since it was failing, I made few changes since then, and it was failing because of some mistake, some library which I've added. So now if I go and run this, maybe I'll just show you the changes which I've made. So I've added a scenario.write here, and I also did something here. So I will uncomment this. And one more change which I would make here is, since this is only returning me the ID, and I would like to, print this information perhaps, that what kind of ID did it return. So what I can do is I can go here and I have a new user creation, and I can actually print it here. So I can write scenario scn.write, and I can write new user created, with ID, with the ID as new user ID, something like that. So it will now print that as well. It will print the new user which is being created. And now let's see, let's try to run this. Did I? Yeah. So this is ID. Yeah. So now if I, let's say, run this again, right click, run as JUnit test. So now it's trying to run all the test cases. I think last two test cases will not pass because I haven't written their definition. So it's pending exception thrown there. The first test case is pass. And if I see its report, let me show the report as well. Run as, no, sorry, open with web browser. So this is not coming as updated. I will have to open this inside here. So three test cases for port, new user created with user. This was what was created. When I hit the API with this entity, this is the body. This is returning the response, and it's everything's getting validated. Maybe I'll just add few more statements for better reporting. So one I have added here. When I hit the API, maybe one I will add here as well, since dot write, and then the response object for this. I think this is good enough. When I hit the API with the put request ID is this. Maybe I will print the URL, maybe the post. So let me write something like this: scenario dot write URL for post endpoint. Perhaps I'll write endpoint is actually, this is what I have hit, right? So maybe I'll mention that here. This is what I've hit, and response is returned, and the API update the user. So this is nothing to print here because it's already only the validation point. Should update the user, and here in the get part, I'm actually doing a get, and I'm getting a response as well. I'm doing some level of validations here, right? So this is how I will do the put requests. Now I'm not going to record the later test cases. So these test cases are pretty straightforward. I'm going to just implement them and post the code in the GitHub. And same holds true with the delete request. If you go and do the delete request here also, I'm doing the same thing, because again, this requires a deletion, right? So we are not supposed to delete the existing test cases, existing entity users there. So again, the best approach here as well will be the same. So I will create an entity here first, and this time I'll use the same step. So I'm use the same step, which is I have a new user created in system. For the delete also, I'll use the same step. Nothing to be done here. When I hit the API with the delete request, this is I have to write for deletion. API should delete the user. This I have to implement. And again, the get request should not return the user. This also needs to be implemented. Right. So maybe I'll not record the implementation part of this. I'll just implement it and put that inside GitHub. You can check the code on the GitHub repository, which is present. It's not open yet. Let me just show you where you can see that. So this is where you will see inside the repositories. Now this is where you are going to supposed to see all the code checked in. So this is where it is. You will see that everything here. So I'm just going to do for delete, for patch. Patch again is very similar to the put. So I'll just modify one statement here, and patch will be done. And then is one more called as options. It's nothing great here. It's just very simple, like it returns what kind of verbs are allowed, methods are allowed for this. So it tells us, all I have to do is to validate whether this string is coming there or not. Get, put, patch, delete, head, and options. Okay, I could have done one more for head, but that's fine. I'm not doing that for another test case for head, right? So I'll do one small thing, which is I'll implement all these test cases, right? Now, for this API part, all that is remaining now is to implement a DI, that is dependency injection, wherein instead of using this test base and using this as static, I will implement uh, the dependency injection Cucumber Pico container concept here. And then I'll try to run this in parallel. Okay, that's the only two things which would remain after I complete all that. So next video on this API and Cucumber implementation would be about DI and parallel executing it via Maven.
right? So that is what I will cover in the next video. And once that is also done, we are going to use the same framework for Selenium with Cucumber automation. So that I'm going to start with the, in the coming weeks. Yeah.